Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Eli Cohen, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of SalesHood. And really excited today to have an amazing guest, Michelle Richardson from the Brooks Group, who's going to be walking us through some incredible data and insights from research that they've conducted from approximately 155 participants, all about leading multi-generational teams. Now, this is so important as we think about 25 and we think about our teams. Like, we all have teams where we've got a variety of people, Gen X, Gen Z, baby boomers, like, and we need to figure out, and we need to be better at training, inspiring, communicating. And so I was really fortunate to be in the room when I watched Michelle initially present this data a few months back. And then I saw it a second time, and I learned so much more the second time. And I invited Michelle to come to the SalesHood, webinar here so we could share this information with our community. And so I'm gonna let Michelle introduce herself, but she's been in the sales profession for decades. She's been at the Brooks Group for 17 years. She's a very client-facing, research-oriented executive, very impressive. And Michelle, please introduce yourself to the crew.
Thank you so much, Eli. I am so happy to be here. I appreciate that introduction. And as you mentioned, so I work for the Brooks Group. I am Vice President of Sales Performance Research. And what that means is essentially three things. Our Sales Performance Research Center is responsible for industry research, like we're going to be talking about today. We also work with organizations on measurement. So ROI, impact measurement from training engagement, skill improvement engagements. And then we also use assessments, and we work with clients on needs analysis, understanding their teams more effectively, hiring and retaining effective sales teams. So that's kind of our threefold purpose. We are a division within the Brooks Group. Would love to connect with you on LinkedIn, so please feel free to reach out. And yeah, we're going to share some research today that we have conducted in 2024, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the research.
Before I pass the baton fully to you, I just want to say this is truly, we're very honored and grateful that you're here. This is a gift. I think as we're thinking about our 2025 strategies, and we're thinking about how we're going to train, how we're going to coach, how we're going to enable, how we're going to, it's relevant not only for our employees, there's also relevance to our buyers. And so it's the entire customer journey. So I hope each of you walks away with some insights that you can take immediately, apply it to your SCOs, apply it to your kickoffs, apply it to your training, apply it to your playbooks, and just, apply it in your next one-on-one, right? There's so much here. And so, Michelle, again, thank you very much for being here, and can't wait for you to walk us through the data.
So let's talk about the research, just to give you a quick sense of what this research was all about. We are going to be presenting data today from our 2024 Sales Leader Trend Reports. We actually did two of them. One was on the best practices of high-performing sales teams, and then managing the multi-generational sales team. And as Eli mentioned, we surveyed 155 North American B2B sales leaders. These were folks in leadership roles: CEOs, GMs, presidents, owners, heads of sales, chief sales officers, VPs, et cetera. In 16 or more than 16 industries and organizations with revenue greater than 50 million. The industry split was even. So these results are not heavily skewed towards one industry or another. It's an even distribution. We're going to be talking about findings from two perspectives. One, from what we call successful teams versus underperforming teams. And when we talk about findings from these successful teams, we segmented the data based on organizations that met or exceeded their previous year's revenue goals. So we call those successful teams. And we compared their performance against underperforming sales teams. So these are teams who missed their previous year's revenue goals. We also segmented the data based on the generational makeup of their team. And that is based on a question that we asked the sales leaders, which was, which generation makes up most of their sales teams? And then we segmented that data around Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, and Boomers. We're going to share 4 key findings from our research with you. We're going to talk about sales process, questioning skills, presenting value, and coaching specifically. I'll share some general findings, and then we're going to drill down on the generational data. And at the end of our time today, you will have a link where you can download both reports if you would like. You can pick one or you can download both of them. So there's way more data in both of these reports than we're going to have time to share today. So you'll have an opportunity to look into those deeper.
Reports are great. I literally have them here. There's so much data in them, and I keep referring back to them as I'm trying to think through a variety of different strategies that we're trying to deploy. So again, thank you, and it's great. And thanks for making them available to everyone. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are in the process of working on our 2025 report. So we'll be doing the 2025 Sales Leader Trend Report. That's going to come out at the end of the month. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be doing a webinar to review the results at the end of January, and that report will be made available then. So the first thing want to talk about, our first finding, is around sales process adherence. So it's not enough just to simply have a sales process. It's that adherence that is key. So 95% of successful teams closely adhere to their sales process. Okay, and again, those successful teams are those teams that met or exceeded their previous year's revenue goals, and the underperforming teams missed their goals. So 95% of successful teams closely adhere to their sales process, but only 69% of underperforming teams do. And then successful teams are more competent across all stages of the sales process compared to underperforming teams. And so when we talk about those stages of the sales process, we're talking about prospecting and pre-call planning, engaging customers, asking good questions, presenting a solution, building value, managing objections, closing the sale. And again, our research showed that 95% of our respondents had a sales process. When I got into sales and sales training decades ago, it was much less common for organizations to have a process in general. More organizations have a process now. The key is adhering to that. And I think that sounds a little bit like common sense, but common sense is not always common practice. So adhering to it, reinforcing it, coaching to it is critically important. And it was a statistically significant finding in our research.
And Michelle, it's interesting today from a technology perspective that a lot of the sales tech AI solutions are trying to solve that problem even today, right? It's
right.
There is no tech. This is a big problem. So the
It
adherence,
is.
great call out.
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, again, the value of a sales process is that commonality. This value of a sales process is that commonality and the consistency across the team. And the only way to really get to that level is that practice and coaching and adherence. So Gen Z teams, so when we looked at generationally, Gen Z teams, or 58% of teams with mostly Gen Z sellers, consistently follow a process compared with 75 to 94% of the other teams. So your Gen Z sellers right now are less likely to follow a sales process. And they just may be unfamiliar. They're newer to the workforce. They just may not have been exposed to a sales process. They may not have been trained on a sales process. They just may not be part of an organization where this is expected and reinforced. And so if you are leading a team with a significant number of Gen Z sellers, look at your sales process, look at how you're coaching to it, look at how you're reinforcing it, and make sure that you've got consistency across all of your generations, and not just maybe your more tenured ones.
Yeah. So Michelle, just make sure we're 1,000% clear with everyone. Gen Z is the newest generation, right? They're
correct.
97, born in 97 through 2012, right? So they're the newest to enter their workforce.
Yes, that is correct. They are the newest to enter the workforce. 97 to 2012, your millennials are going to be the next youngest group, which born 1981 to 1996,
Yeah.
your Gen X's, 1965 to 1980, and your baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. So you've got like baby boomers now kind of um, edging towards retirement as Gen Zs are entering the workforce.
So if I'm a leader, thank you. If I'm a leader
Mhm.
and I've got a team filled with Gen Z, how do I get them to adhere to the sales process? Like, what, do you have any insights on that? Tips?
So one thing I would say is um, make sure that you're aligning with their values. They're much more
Yeah.
um, socially conscious. They're much more mission oriented. They prefer more collaborative environments. And so from a leadership perspective, especially, knowing that we've got a primarily large group of Gen X folks on this webinar today, um, we're not necessarily wired in that same way. And so really helping to give feedback and regular coaching around that adherence. We're going to talk about peer coaching a
Yeah.
little bit coming up. Um, Forming more collaborative environments with peers can be very helpful in driving that as well. And then also showing the value of sales process, any kind of skill development in how it's going to help them make an impact.
Joel has an interesting comment, I think, on the Gen Z folks, Michelle. I think, what do you think of all the rise of the AI assistant and the AI coach and this AI co-pilot, whatever the noun is you want to use, that folks now have in their apps? Like, I would think, what do you think? Gen Zs probably will lean into the AI partners to help them adhere better, right?
Yes, I mean, your Gen Zs are definitely more digitally native, more
Yeah.
comfortable with technology, especially compared to, say, your boomers. Where I think there is a possible watch out for leaders
Yeah.
is you've got this AI is can be a great tool. It can help you write your prospecting letters and or generate your agendas for sales calls and all of that kind of thing. But you also need to train your sellers or make sure your sellers have the communication skills, the skills to interact with customers, because at some point the conversation, the communication has to switch from the AI generated information to the human to human contact. And so sometimes we can set an expectation with this really nicely crafted AI email
Yeah.
outreach.
Super,
And
super smart, super informed,
right,
knows everything about your industry, and then you show up and it's like, who is this person?
exactly. And there's a disconnect. And then your
Yeah.
buyer's like, well, this wasn't the impression that I got. So you've got to now level up and make sure that your sellers are showing up in a professional way. They can ask good questions, that they can engage, they can build rapport and build trust. So making sure that almost your sellers are living up to the expectations set by their AI generated tools, I think is going to be key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, everyone, Saleshood helps with this. And if you've got a Gen Z organization, a Gen Z center team, and you want them to be empowered with AI, using to the question in the chat, using some of the public stuff like ChatGPT will increase hallucinations. But if you have a partner like Saleshood that can be organizationally and content aware of when you've got your team submitting queries and prompts and trying to actually go faster with AI, it can reduce the hallucinations and it could make the AI quality be that much better. So just be mindful about what AI tools you're making available to your teams, and we can dive into that after the call as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The other piece of that is, I think, again, just being smart about how you use AI, right?
Yeah.
You're using it for um, to generate your emails and that sort of thing. But then looking at SalesHood and like the AI practice um, modules that you have in there, it's a great way to reinforce those skills, to practice those skills. So it can be a great support, not only in the tools that may be more customer facing, but kind of on the back end in terms of leveling up skill
Yeah.
set.
We're actually seeing much higher adoption by Gen Z profiled salespeople of
Hmm.
the AI for pitch practice and the AI for role playing compared to some of the baby boomers, because they're the Gen Z folks, they want the feedback, but they
Yeah,
want it on their terms, is
right.
what we're seeing. And yeah, I'll log in and I'll interact with this bot, kind of this AI coach, and get feedback. So I think it's great. It's great. I appreciate you
Yeah,
bringing that up.
yeah, absolutely. And as we've mentioned, Gen Z is more comfortable generally. Again, all of these are generalizations. So obviously, you all need know your teams and the individuals on your teams well. And so these are generalizations, but generally, Gen Z is going to embrace technology anyway. Whereas, especially your boomers, they may be a little bit more reluctant to engage in that to begin with, let alone, just figuring it out. So,
You could see the boomer saying something like, I don't need an AI giving me feedback on my pitch. Like, I got it.
yeah,
Thank you. I've been doing
right.
this for decades. I'm a-okay. Thank you very much.
Right, right, right. And Eli, we were at an event a couple of months ago, and we had, speaking of experienced team members and knowing their pitch, we had an organization using Saleshood, using in Brooks Up. They were practicing their value proposition,
Yeah.
and the sales leader was saying, I'm listening to my team and deliver their sales pitch, and found out that his experienced team members were not as good as maybe they should have been given their level of experience. So Joel asked, do
Yeah.
Gen Z sellers understand value sellers selling in the same way Gen X see value? And we're going to talk about that
We're
here
going
in
to
just a
talk
few
about that.
minutes. Yeah, so that's a great setup. That's a great
Yeah.
setup.
I think to your point before we go, I think John Guerrero from Copado is commenting and saying kind of the AI coach allows our new hires to practice and get feedback without the ick factor, and so
Right.
it's reduced the time to being call ready. So I think to your point, Michelle, I think a lot of leaders are realizing that their most senior sellers, the ones that are the most experienced, are actually least conversation ready,
Mm-hmm.
and so this is helping them. So I love the fact that, like, now you've got tools that Gen Z folks are going to adopt, will actually pull up, kind of baby boomers using it at the same time.
Right.
It'll make the Gen Z folks be, conversationally ready, as it's a great peer-to-peer inherent thing happening in here
Mm-hmm.
as well, which I love.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I just love the ick factor comment there. That, I mean, and it's true. It's true.
It's true. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of our findings around effective questioning. So, in our survey, we asked our sales leaders to rate their sellers against four kind of distinct questioning strategies. And essentially, we asked them which strategy is most commonly used by your sales team. So the best one is they ask questions, excuse me, around
Bless you.
uncovering customer needs and the underlying wants. So they will, their sellers will understand what the customer needs to buy, why they will need it, why they need it. So they try to really get to that emotional driver of the decision. The second most effective is that they ask questions around identifying customer needs and that buying process. So, what's that process for making a decision?
Yeah.
The third most effective is product based questions. So, they're asking questions that lead strictly to which product do they, does the seller need to spec? And then the least effective is they ask some introductory questions and then they pitch. Right? They pitch their product, they pitch their service.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that first question is kind of awkward,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and and
yeah,
and, so I got it. Okay.
yeah. So successful teams are 60% more likely to use those top two strategies. So understanding both needs and wants, and then also understanding the customer's buying process. So they understand the dynamic for making a decision, but they really dig in and they're more effective at asking and understanding kind of the full picture, right? So they're not asking a couple of questions to identify what product the customer needs. They're going deeper to really understand that why.
Yeah. There's an interesting question, Michelle,
Yeah.
that is about, the comment from Aaron is questioning skills and prospecting skills are both coachable, right? You
Hmm.
could teach someone to be more curious. You could teach someone to be
Right.
effective at their outreach. And so is the inherent challenge then? So here's the question. Might this lead you to conclude that there is a lack of consistent one-on-one coaching at the sales manager slash sales leader positions, which kind of does basically explain the whole purpose of the webinar, leading multi-generational teams. But how would you
Right.
comment?
Yeah, I think those are both trainable skills. Um, and so I do think that there is a need for more effective sales management, coaching, identifying, like really being able to assess their seller skills and being able to coach to it. So I absolutely do think. I think some people are um, maybe also hardwired to be more inclined to do prospecting. Um, that's a whole nother webinar right there.
Yeah.
But I think they're both teachable skills. And so it is incumbent on organizations to train and to coach to those if they really want to improve their overall sales effectiveness. Those are two huge areas. Yep.
I'm thinking out loud here, not rehearsed with a question, Michelle. Like I'm imagining we could probably create, if you haven't already, like a coaching guide for frontline managers
Mhm.
based on this data.
Yeah, you absolutely could. Now, our management training, we have a coaching program that
Yeah,
does include a coaching guide. Here's how to identify what proficiency looks like in each of these skill areas. Um, and we certainly do teach managers how to use that, how to identify,
right.
and how to coach to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
The first step
yeah,
for manager, just be aware that there's a different, the way you train, inspire, communicate, and engage your team is going to vary
right.
by gender. So that's like step one here.
Right, right. Just recognize that there is a difference in skill set. Number one, that these skill sets make a difference in revenue attainment. So successful versus underperforming teams, these are areas where we found distinct differences. So just in general. And then when you drill down to the generational pieces, there may be differences in the different generations of your sales teams.
For sure.
Yeah. One other thing, a point on the questioning skills as well. I think as organizations in general, when we bring in new salespeople and we're training them, we tend to focus there's just a natural focus on product training, on understanding features and benefits. And I think that also speaks to the data where a lot of sellers are more comfortable talking about product because
Yeah.
especially if they have a technical and very complex product, because that's where we as historically have focused all our training. You got to understand what it is you sell, and now what they need to do is shift and understand what the customer wants and why they want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Michelle, there are a lot of um, CEO founders out there. I'm raising my hand, right, as one of them who so passionate about their solution that they just want to like
Right.
make sure. So they over-index on product training and solution training too much and forget some of these core skills that are really important for folks to master.
Right. Right. And I think that's true of sellers. I mean, I would certainly agree with you. I think we have a lot of sellers out there, though, that are very passionate about what it is that they sell. Um,
Yeah,
and the benefits that it can bring. So really just kind of shifting that mindset and that skill set.
amazing. This is
Yep.
such great data. And you can see all the chat. A lot of people are really getting
I
Michelle.
love this. Yeah, I love this. I appreciate the engagement and the questions. Um, so the flip side we talked about, successful teams 60% more likely to understand the emotional wants and needs customers buying process. Underperforming teams more likely to stay focused on those product and introductory questions. And so that's just what we've been talking about. Um, one thing for 2025, regardless of the generations on your team, is really look at their questioning skills. And going back to Joel's question on skills that leaders need to be paying attention to, this is really one of them. This is key. If you want a more consultative sales team, look at how they are engaging customers and really conducting that discovery. If they're focused on product questions, then let's shift them more to something broader. Because they're leaving money on the table, they're missing opportunities.
Makes sense. Totally. Be more
Yeah.
curious in 2025.
Yes. Yes. Love that. 2025 is the year of curiosity.
But intentionally curious, I think, is so critical because you could ask bad questions
You
and
absolutely can. Yeah.
ask the right questions at the right time. And there's
Right.
we go so deep there too, but let's keep going. There's even,
Yeah.
more. I love it.
And but wait, there's more. Yes. So as we look at the different generations, 25% of Gen Z sellers use the most effective questioning strategy compared to 19% of millennials and 15% of Gen X sellers. So we almost have an inverse relationship there where your more experienced sellers may be less likely to ask these deeper questions.
Whoa. What do you think that's happening?
So I think there's a couple of things at play. Number one, I think that, many of us more tenured professionals have been through a good economy where perhaps we didn't have to work as hard to sell what it was that we were offering. Budgets were freer. And so, the demand was there. We didn't have to go and generate the demand ourselves. We did not necessarily have to do all of the work because it was just easier. So Gen Z sellers are coming into the workforce at a time where perhaps the economy is getting a little bit tighter, budgets are tighter, they've got more committees. So it's just a little bit more of a complicated environment now. So they're having to maybe dig a little bit deeper.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, the other thing that I see is that, again, with those of us who are more tenured, we've seen it all, we've heard it all. And so you hear a customer say something and a need, and they're like, okay, I know exactly what it is they need. So they kind of make assumptions and jump ahead just because, again, they know more, they've seen more, they've experienced more. So they're just, I don't want to say lazier, but they're going ahead and moving forward. Whereas someone that's newer in the workforce, someone that's newer to an organization, maybe needs to ask a few more questions, right? They don't have that memory or that kind of automatic response of, if I hear this need, then I need this product. So I'm just going to speed it up and move faster.
They don't have the B2B software or the traditional selling Pavlovian reaction. If you say
exactly
this, that.
Right. If this, then that.
Yes.
They don't have that. Yeah. So I like that Pavlovian reaction. I mean, that's it exactly. So I think there's a couple of things that could be at work there. And so Joel is saying Gen Z folks are more accustomed to calling on large buyer teams and buyer teams that are virtual or co-located. Gen X is used to one-on-one, face-to-face with one buyer. And I think that's true.
Yeah.
Different sales environments.
Think about it, right? So a Gen Zer is probably more comfortable asking awkward, hard questions on a virtual call, where someone who's used to being in a conference room face to face I can't ask that on a Zoom call. That totally makes sense. I see that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think what we have also seen, just looking at how people have changed through, particularly coming out of COVID, we've seen sellers needing to be more planful, right? If you're getting on a Zoom call, you have 30 minutes, you're going to be a little bit more prescriptive in how you use your time. Whereas you could maybe drop by a client, drop off some bagels, some donuts, have have more of a social conversation before kind of getting into the questioning. So I do think there's probably something um, to kind of the change in how we meet with clients now.
But
And
if I'm a
virtual
frontline
certainly.
manager, Michelle, think about it, and I've got a Gen Zer and I've got a baby
Mhm.
on the same team, and you could almost like look at the baby boomer and go, okay, go back in time. Remember when you'd be sitting face to face? What kind of questions would you ask?
Right,
And then you
right.
could look at your Gen Z and go, okay, now I want you, how would you adapt those questions onto a Zoom call? What an
Right.
interesting dialogue to have with a team on a weekly call, like just to kind of
Yeah.
practice and brainstorm together.
Yeah, absolutely. And spoiler, because we're going to talk a little bit about
Yes.
coaching
Sorry.
and even peer coaching. No,
Yeah.
but I mean that's exactly it. It's um, leverage your different generations on your team and pair them up because certainly your boomers and your Gen X's in particular, your millennials will have something that they can mentor and coach younger sellers on. But your younger sellers can also do the same with some of your more tenured sellers as well. And it's a good opportunity to kind of mix and let them support each other and share different ideas across
Yeah.
the team.
I always walk away with something new every time I hear you go through the data, and I just it's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've got a comment here. Aaron has found that millennials and Xers need to be worked with differently. It speaks to why sales managers need to build a very personalized approach to the players on their teams. And that, yes, that is, I think that's the overarching message is we can't treat everyone in the same way and approach everyone in the same way. And it's generational, it's different communication styles. There's a lot of different things at play here. But being aware and knowing what to look for is a great way to start.
Absolutely.
All right, so there was a question earlier about presenting value,
Selling value, right? Value selling.
selling value. Yeah, so Joel, this one's for you too. So we also asked, much like we asked the question in our survey around questioning skills, we asked our sales leaders how their sales teams were most likely to present value for their solution. Again, we gave them 4 options from most effective to least effective. Number 1 was connecting value to ROI. So in presenting a solution, their sales teams were able to connect value for their solution to some kind of return back to the customer.
Yeah.
Number 2 was they connected value to the customer's needs and wants. So they were able to connect the dots from those needs and wants they uncovered in the questioning, and they built value for it in the solution. Number 3 was they discuss all of the value components, right? So all the features, all the things about their solution. And then number 4, they focus solely on price. So again, successful teams are 2 times more likely to connect the value of their solution to ROI for the customer. So that is the most
Yeah.
effective strategy. And so if your teams are not doing this, this is another area as a sales leader that you may want to focus on in terms of how they present value. Are they connecting and able to really articulate what that return on investment is back to their customer? And then underperforming teams are 7 times more likely than successful teams to present based on price. Okay,
Right.
so now you're getting down to a more commoditized, um, a commoditized situation there because you're focusing on price and you're giving your customer an opportunity to really compare apples to apples.
Totally. Totally. There's a question about the first one, which was ROI versus risk. And
Mm-hmm.
I think yeah, I'd be curious your perspective on in terms of like the benefit to a customer of risk versus ROI. What have you learned in your research from that
I
about
think
that?
that's a really, yeah, that's a good question. One of the things that when we teach presenting value and not really, it's not really reflected in this question, But what we teach is that when a seller is presenting their solution, they need to be mindful of what we call the perceived benefits. So, what the customer is going to receive from that solution. Okay, so that's the ROI piece. That's the being able to, again, connecting back to those needs and wants. They also need to be aware of the risks associated with it, or what we call the emotional costs. So, change, right? The cost of change, the cost of um, relationships, lost time, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so a seller needs to uncover that as part of their questioning. They need to make sure they're asking questions to understand what the potential risks are. And then they need to make sure they're presenting their solution in a way that offsets those risks. So when we're talking about communicating return on investment, when we're talking about communicating that solution in a way that creates value, you're doing so in a way with in mind that you're trying to reduce the risk, if that makes sense. So we're not
Totally.
necessarily saying you need to talk about reducing risk. It may be appropriate in that particular situation if that's been something that you've talked about with the customer. But what we want to do is make sure that we are communicating an ROI that offsets that risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes total sense. Thanks for going deeper on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So then when we look at the generational data,
Ooh, this is where it gets interesting. I love it.
yeah, so the Gen Z sellers use that connect value to ROI approach more than other sellers. So 25% of Gen Z teams connect value to ROI, 23% of millennial teams connect value to ROI, 3% of Gen X teams connect value to ROI.
So
So
Michelle, we're both Gen Xers. Why are we so bad at it?
again, we haven't had to do it.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of complacency on the part of more experienced sellers. Again, the sales environment that we came up in is very different, or was very different than where we are now. Um, and so I think that's a large part of it. The other thing that I will say is 25%, even though Gen Z is better than millennials and Gen Xers, there's still a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
So it's still an opportunity for all of the generations to improve. And so if I'm a sales leader and I'm coaching my team, I want to make sure that we're not focusing on price. We're not focusing on all the features, all the value components of our solution. We're really honing in on connecting to those wants and needs and really connecting value to ROI. That's that other skill, kind of, again, going back to Joel's original question here at the beginning of our session today. This is another opportunity for focus.
Great.
And the best way to do that, ask better questions. Ask better questions. It sets you up to then be able to present your solution in a way that connects value to ROI, because the customers told you what's important to them.
Yeah. Great advice here. Looks
Yeah.
like this is going to be a topic on a lot of people's kickoffs coming up.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about coaching. So successful teams, so we asked about coaching. So successful teams, again, those that met or exceeded quota, empower managers to use coaching as a method for continuous learning and development. And they leverage peer coaching to develop sellers and reinforce skills. And we kind of talked about this, Eli,
Yeah.
a few minutes ago. Peer coaching was one of the kind of surprising findings that came out of our research. Um, Successful teams, 41% use peer coaching compared to underperforming teams. And I think this is a great way to connect cross-generational teams. Being able to match up sellers of different generations based on whatever that development area or that gap area is. We've talked about comfort with technology, or who asks really good questions, or being able to communicate that ROI, those types of things, being able to to pair sellers up. It's a great way to scale your coaching efforts
Yeah.
and engage your sellers at the same time.
One of my biggest takeaways,
Yeah.
the cross-generational peer coaching as a
Yep.
driver to scale is remarkable.
Yes. Yes. I mean, we see that in we do small group coaching too as part of our training, and it's a great way to again leverage peer coaching, get input from other sellers. So then they're supporting each other. Um, on the manager coaching, we've talked about that all through our session today. It is so important for driving skill development, for driving process adherence. It's just a great way for continuous learning and probably an area where most organizations could really focus in terms of developing their
Yeah.
managers.
Michelle, the
And I
question
think,
here is, oh, sorry.
yeah.
The question here is interesting. I have a thought on it, but I'll summarize it. Do you really think a Gen Xer or a
Mhm.
baby boomer will want to be taught or coached or peer coached by a Gen Zer? I've got a point of view, but I want you to share first.
So I think it depends on how it's framed. First of all, I
Exactly.
think as a leader, you probably don't want to go to your Gen X salesperson or your boomer person and say, look, Gen Z salesperson over here, Joe Gen Z is gonna teach you how to do X, Y, Z. Or you need to get him to teach you how to do this because you aren't good at it. So I think it's how it's set up. And I think the idea is there's mutual opportunity for both of them to learn.
Yeah.
Hey, I think that it would be really great for the two of you to get together. Joe Gen Z over here has some really interesting prospecting methods that he's using with AI. I'd love for him to show you. I'd really like for you to talk to him and mentor him around, um, how you negotiate or how you manage objections or how you ask questions, whatever that might be. But I think it needs to be, it's all in the setup. And if you're doing it across the entire sales team, you're normalizing it as well.
Yeah. Listen, if a Gen Zer, and I completely agree, Michelle. I think it's how you frame it, which really comes down to the skills of the frontline manager and the sales leader, and how they frame it and how they are enabling this to happen. If you
Right.
have a Gen Zer that's really crushing it and is more efficient and is, their conversions are higher, their leads are creating are higher, and their win rates are higher, then you know what, like people are going to want to pay attention, and it's up to the manager to kind of hone in on the specific things that that person's doing, and then to kind of have that be spread across the rest of the team. So I think it's all about the manager's ability to really create a space where there's true knowledge sharing happening, and it needs to be mutual, Michelle. I think that's a fabulous,
Right.
very important word.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think as an organization, we need to be setting the expectation that we all have room to learn. We all have something to gain and share with each other. And so it really is. It all is in the setup. And to the comment here, the space needs to be seen as safe. Yes, this is in the spirit of everyone reaching their goals, everyone selling more and being more successful. It's not punitive, it's constructive.
Yeah. Great comment from John. Our top
Yeah,
sellers across all generations are great at learning from anyone they can. They don't care where the good ideas come from. So that's real. And that's a
right.
very diverse sales team. And I know the team, and a great comment, John. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I love that. They don't care where the good ideas come from. I mean, that's it. We're all here to bring the good ideas to help the
We're all
entire
here to
team.
win. Let's
Right,
win together, right?
right, right, right.
That's
Absolutely.
there we go.
Yeah.
All right. We're getting close on time. It's crazy.
Yes, we are. And we're
That
just
went
about at the
fast.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, immediate action steps, you can see them here. We talked about adhering to sales process, training on skills that give your team an advantage, and reinforcing skills and process through coaching and manager inspection. And I promised links to download these reports. So here they are, 2 QR codes. Feel free. Hope you will download them, take a look at them. Feel free to reach out with questions on the reports as well. And as I said, we've got that report, the newest report coming out in January.
Yeah. I think really, really great, and there are a couple more questions. I think the one comment I want to make is someone said, "I wish this could have been 2 hours," and we're really just scratching the surface. So I definitely encourage you to dig into these reports, and we'll make sure that when the 25 report comes out, you'll get access to it as well. I think it's going to be. I can't wait to see the new data, and just before we answer those last two questions, Michelle, I just want people to
Mhm.
know. You know, the partnership between Sales and the Brooks Group is really deep. And if anyone is interested in really experimenting, exploring with AI from a coaching perspective, from a selling perspective, and you want to do it so that way you can bring the amazing AI efficiency to your teams, let us know. We've got AI pitch practice, we've got AI role playing, we've got AI for digital selling. So we're here to support you, and it's all fully integrated with the Brooks Up too. So if you're a Brooks Up customer, boom, we can make it happen. If you're looking at both, there's a number of scenarios. But my final comment is, if you are interested in seeing a demo of either Brooks Up, or you want to see a demo of Sales Hood's, kind of AI for revenue enablement, please let us know. The links will be available. We'll send them to you as a follow-up, and they're also, for those watching the replay, down below in the comments, as in the description, as they say. So let me just pause and say thank you very, very much, Michelle, for being here and sharing your insights. Really remarkable. I learned a whole bunch of new stuff today, and I think the stats are just amazing and very actionable. There are a couple more questions, but any final words, Michelle, before we tackle those last remaining questions?
I just want to say thank you for having me. I had a great time. Appreciate the audience engagement and questions. And I think the biggest takeaway that I could say is be aware of your own generation, your own style, and how you as leaders communicate, and then be aware of and adapt to the differences in your team.